Hey guys, I'm Danny.
And I'm EJ, and this is the Your Living Proof podcast,
where we talk about addiction and how it affects the family, from the brutal to the beautiful and everything in between.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Your Living Proof podcast. We are at episode 97.
Yeah, we made it here by the skin of our teeth.
97. That's what we're at. We're almost at 100. I think when we hit 100, someone needs to sponsor the podcast.
Okay.
If you're listening out there and you're like, okay, we'll sponsor it, that'd be great. We'd really love that and appreciate it. But no, we're really excited. It's an important topic today. Before we get started, we just did something extremely fun, and I'm being as sarcastic as possible. We just sat in dead stop traffic on the freeway.
It was awful for literally like 52 minutes.
For like an hour, and where it wasn't moving, and it was only for a short period of time. You could see on the little GPS that little red line was only extended for a little bit in front of us, but we didn't move anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, like, we only needed to go like a mile and a half, but it took us an hour. So that was fun.
And
I wanted to get out and run, but...
Yeah. Well, we got up to the end, and it's something crazy. Like, all the highway patrols had circled their cars, and then they'd even put little tarps in between the little gap of their highway patrol cars. So obviously something happened that wasn't good, and they didn't want anybody to see. So
horrible.
I know. I was trying to think what's worse than sitting in traffic. We've all done it. It's the biggest waste of time. There's really not much you can do. I mean, I guess people play on their phones now, but what did you do in the old days? Just sing, roll down the windows, and play your music?
Well, what we did, we just talked.
But there is something worse. I experienced it this week. It was... You've all had those moments as parents. My 12-year-old son...
something worse is the one being in the accident.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Second to that is
Well,
whatever you're about
I'm
to
referring to just in traffic. Like, what's worse than being in traffic? Of course, the person in the accident, I feel bad. I'm just being selfish and saying, for me, what's worse in traffic?
Yes.
It was having that experience that we all do as parents. It was like 12:30 at night. I'd recently taken my little melatonin, which I like to do at night to sleep. And my 12-year-old son busts in the room, which always scares me. He came in hot. Like, remember back Kramer? What was that movie?
Yes.
Kramer in the movie, if you're old enough to know Seinfeld.
It was a series,
not a
movie.
Yeah, the series. Well, he busts in the door like that. Well, it was my son.
Yeah, it was a Seinfeld moment. He kind of always busts in our room like that.
Oh, my gosh. He's like, Dad, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it to the bathroom. And as a parent, you're just like, okay. You know what to expect. It's not good. So I go downstairs, and he had been complaining earlier that his stomach hurt. Thankfully, he made it to the edge of his bed, but that was it. He didn't even make it a step.
Oh,
and he threw up everywhere. To where when I was coming down the stairs, even before I got to the hallway of his room, I could smell it.
Oh, my heavens.
So I'm half asleep. My melatonin's kicking in. I'm like delusional, and I'm looking, and there is it's like an 8-foot circumference all over the floor and up the wall of throw up. It went under his bed.
Oh, mercy. That is
You've
worst.
all been there. We've all had that.
Yeah, of course. If you're a parent, I don't think single people are doing this, but.
And I'm mad, and I'm looking at him, and he's hurting, and he feels bad, and it's like, he's just frozen. He can't do anything. And
because he's just so sick.
And you just don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And you're so you're so out of your mind tired. You're like, what day is it? That actually reminds me of something that I was listening to a different podcast this morning, and something was shared that really struck a chord with me, having to do with vomit. But this has a very different spin to it. And it was Melissa Inouye's book, The Sacred Struggle. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that book.
You said Sacred Struggle?
Yeah, that's the name of her book. She had cancer for years. I can't even remember. It was 8 or 9 years. Anyway, she was talking about how she threw up one time. She was trying to keep down this medicine after her chemo treatment, and she just could not keep it down. And she was at home with her husband, and she just had to leave the kitchen with vomit all over the place. And she was saying that she felt that when you clean somebody else's vomit up, it's one of the truest forms of love. And I thought, well, as a parent, yes, that's true, because it's like you don't even think like, nope, you clean it up. You just immediately know, like, I'm gonna go clean that up for my poor child that's so sick. But it made me think about, because addiction's always on my mind, obviously. It just made me think about addiction and how true that is, what a metaphor that is for addiction, because your loved one is so sick. And they have not literally, but in other ways, vomited all over your life and your home and your relationships. And you are sitting there thinking, clean it up.
Look what you just did.
Look what you did. Come on. Choose to choose something different. But they are so sick that they cannot clean it all up. They can't even start. They're too sick. And I just want you to think about that this week as you think about your loved one, and try to get that perspective, because I really, it struck me so hard, because it's so frustrating, I know, but it's also so true.
What a segue. That wasn't even planned. We didn't plan that.
No. 'Cause
Like, I just shared, out of the blue, I just shared that horrendous story. We just sat in traffic, and I wanted to vent for a minute. And then I said, well, what's worse? And that was my story. And then you happened to listen to that. We're in
Yeah.
the flow.
It's called being in the flow, guys.
Lady in red. I am in flow with the
when you're
lady in
listening
red.
to this, it's Valentine's Day, or almost Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
Or maybe
and
the
if-
day after Valentine's
If
Day.
you aren't on our YouTube channel, you can go and see. She has red lipstick and a red shirt, and I am in flow with the lady in red.
With
guess-
your camouflage.
Yes. I have a golf shirt on today. It's like a camouflage shirt.
He really changed it up, guys. Danny is a basic man.
We're off subject. Yes,
Okay,
my
sorry.
kids call me vanilla.
He is. He's as vanilla as they come.
Not because of like the color of my skin. They're like, it's because you're just so boring.
Oh no, it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Yeah, it's just vanilla.
That's terrible. I
And
don't
I'm
even
like,
care.
I'm like the funfetti pack.
I don't
like
even care.
The party pack.
I have 5 shirts. If you go back in YouTube and watch, there's a rotation of 5 shirts. Today, there's a new one.
Hey, but at least they're colors.
Okay,
you know?
let's get back in. People
Okay,
don't
sorry.
care about our life. I know that you're here today because most of you are in situations that you're trying to navigate through. Most of them have progressed to it so bad that you're like, I need to seek help. I'm going to go listen to a podcast where people are talking about addiction. But you know what? We hope this empowers you. We hope it brings some clarity as you're making those next steps for your loved one. First of all, the fact that you're here and investing your time to learn more about their situation is the greatest thing that you can be doing. It's what most of the world fails to do. Everyone's looking at this sick person that just threw up over the floor is the best analogy. And they're just like, wait, are you going to clean that up? That's why most people in addiction never even start the process of healing, because the people around them are just waiting. So we're not waiting. There's a lot we can do. So, by the way, in our groups this week, we are covering the myths of addiction. One of the myths is, well, there's nothing I can do. They're going to have to figure this out. That is the greatest myth and lie that's preventing any possibility of change. There's a lot you can do. You can start recognizing your role in this. You can start recognizing how the addiction has lied and betrayed and manipulated and worn you down to start thinking different, reacting different. So much you can do. So we're glad you're here to learn that. We're going to segue right into this because one of the biggest challenges is when families are not on the same page, right?
Yes. Yes.
Someone in your household, in your family circles, off the rails. Undeniably, there's a problem now, right? Most of you probably progressed past the point where it's like, well, is it or isn't it a problem? Most of you that are listening, it is a problem. There's no denying that. But still, the family disagrees.
Yep.
In the world of recovery, in the behavioral health world, the term is, it's a family illness.
Addiction is a family illness.
Yeah, it's a family disease. And please, as a former addict, alcoholic, all the things, I know that that's probably offensive to normal people. For those that didn't do anything to put the family in this situation, that's hard to relate to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it, right? Most of you listening, if I was like, oh, well, your loved one's sick because now your family's sick. Wouldn't that be, I bet there's a lot of pushback. So if you're listening and pushing back to that,
Yeah.
we hear you, we feel you, we see you. And that's why we want to talk about this today. Can we just quickly give you, there's more than 10. There's probably 30. But these are just unanimously top 10 signs. If you can't relate to the word sick or ill, that the family's ill as well with your loved one, let's just say like they're deeply affected.
Okay.
10 signs, real quick. I'll go number
10
one.
10 signs that your family is
We
sick.
wrote these down so that
Is that the topic?
Yeah, 10 signs that your family has become sick along with your loved one.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, number one, increased conflict and arguments by everyone because of the addiction.
Oh, I love that one because it's just it. What's funny about it is that you hear that and you're like, well, yeah, of course we're arguing about it.
Yeah.
But it's also like, how long have you been arguing about it?
Well, it's like the elephant in the room and people are responding different. And then there's tension, there's contention, and there's disagreement about responses or lack thereof. That's a big indicator.
And then there gets to be these little, what I call like these little family gangs. And maybe I can say that just because I have a really big family. So it's like there's 8 siblings and 2 parents. So there's going to be like 2 or 3 siblings that are on like camp mom. Like they like the way mom approached this problem. And then there's going to be other ones that are like, nope, that was completely wrong. Us over here, we agree with dad and how he's approaching it. And then there's going to be people that think everyone's wrong and that they're the only one that's right. And so it's just like these little sections of arguments.
But that happens naturally. And for the rest of us that don't have that big of a family, and it's not a little army, it's just individually. Someone's angry or someone's like really loving and compassionate. And it just causes contention, all in the name of the addiction.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Do you want to go through?
Yeah. And then the second one is financial strain due to substance-related expenses. Not only what they spend, but how it's drained you, bailing them out from all their problems, their vomit.
Whether it's a spouse or whether it's a child or a sibling, it affects everybody eventually.
Oh, yeah.
You're helping them out with this, paying the rent for this. Over time, there's a major financial strain. That's a big indicator. Number 3 is isolation from relatives and friends. You've seen your loved one do it. But in most families, I would challenge you to look at how you've isolated yourself from certain families, maybe certain circles of influence at church or in your life. The addiction has caused you to isolate or remove, disconnect from important relationships.
I think that one's a little stealthy because I think most people can really, really see it in their loved one. Like, oh, they've withdrawn now from this group of friends, or
they're hiding in the basement, never leaving.
Or they've just withdrawn from something that they love, But then it's really hard sometimes to see that in yourself, like how your trauma surrounding it has caused you to maybe stop working out with your gym buddies, or stop doing one of your favorite hobbies, or stop speaking up at church, like in classes or whatever. You're a little bit more withdrawn, and you don't feel comfortable in some of your circles that you used to feel comfortable
Well,
in.
the process of addiction is detachment from everything, ultimately from God. But it happens with the individual in addiction, and it also starts to happen with the family. And sometimes it's forced upon you to do it. So,
and I think that is like true in every addiction, but for sure it's a massive one for people who have a spouse with a porn or sex addiction.
oh, for sure, the stigma's in there. Like, if it's an alcoholic, usually it doesn't apply as much because now we're kind of accepting of that. It's pretty common. But when they're like a terrible, like heroin or meth addict or a sex addict, especially like you said, it detaches you from a lot of people.
Yeah, you just feel like other people can't relate.
Again, that's just an indicator that the addiction is passed through one person into everyone else, including yourself. Number 4, I'm going to say, Okay.
Is that okay? You're going really, really fast. You're really...
Yeah, we have a lot to cover.
Shifts in family roles to accommodate the addict. So one person will be the role of justice, and the other person will be the role of mercy.
It's hilarious. I even had a dad who, when I met him and his wife the first time, that's what he introduced us as. He's like, "Thank you. Thanks for coming to help us. I'm justice. This is mercy." He already recognized those roles. Yeah. But there's also like the secret hider, like a sibling that keeps the secrets. There's the aggressor, which is the one that's always up in their face. These roles have been assumed because of what? Because of your loved one's addiction.
Well, and really, if you're listening to this, you should think about that. Like, be honest about the role you're playing. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, mom's the mercy, but what are you? So really take the time to think about that.
And we're going to get to that reason and what's so empowering is when you do acknowledge this, how you shift it and how you change it for the better. Number 5, emotional distress among friends and family members. We just covered that a lot, so we can move on.
Oh, okay. 6, neglect of family responsibilities.
Yeah, you make exceptions, right? Everyone else is expected. This is what I love. Everyone else in the family is expected to do certain things to contribute to life as a family, but the person in addiction, they're the exception.
That's the one that makes me the most mad. I'm going to be honest. I hate that one.
To some degree, it's
that's a
happened.
really, really good one to think about and consider. Like, ask yourself, do I make a different set of rules for this one person? Like, is this one person living a completely different set of rules than everyone else in my family?
Well, it's easy to see and compare when it's a child, but if it's a spouse, just think of the simple fact of all that you do in parenting as well as caring for the family financially. It's just unfair. Just look at it and look at yourself and see if you can answer it honestly.
All right. 7, secrecy and lies become common.
That's hard because the person in addiction, that's literally the byproduct of addiction is lying. Mm-hmm. They even lie to themselves. They have a distorted reality, so they can't see it. But everyone else harbors little secrets of what they should and shouldn't know. I could give you so many examples.
Oh, that one is huge.
Yeah.
And everyone falls into it. Like, regardless of anything, like, you'll find yourself harboring a secret for them or about them from other people in your family. Like, what this person can't know that, or else this.
Well, let me
is
give you a
gonna
good
happen.
example. I worked with a family not long ago. The mom and dad came to the realization things were bad. Their daughter actually overdosed, went to the hospital. The mom went there, and upon leaving with their daughter, asked me to make sure that we didn't say anything to dad because it didn't want to upset him about what had happened. Now, you can see why there's logic in that, maybe what her intent was, but that is feeding the disease of addiction.
Yes.
Number 8 is deterioration of trust between siblings, parents, and children. I think that one goes without saying.
Yes.
Like, you just start to lose trust. And not only with the sick individual, but others in your family because of the addiction still.
Yes.
So,
9, changes in children's behavior or performance at school or social settings. Equally, this applies to people in their work performance, their productivity. They have a hard time keeping a job. Their satisfaction of their employer is low.
but are you talking about the person in addiction?
Yes,
Is it-
but also the people who love them. In fact, I would say for most of the time, it affects the people around them way more than it affects the addict. The addict is actually sometimes they get better at work for a certain amount of time. Like, they're able to like thrive in that environment a little bit.
Yeah,
But-
for a short period
for
of
a
time.
short period of time. But what happens to the people who love them when someone that they love is struggling? Do you think they're the best workers? Do you think they're doing their very best job?
No, if there's kids involved, it causes anxiety. It shows at school. If it's you, it's a lack of productivity. And again, this is all because of something that we've unaddressed for a long time. Number 10, increased health problems among family members. We just talked about this. Everybody's literally, if it's not a metaphor, they are becoming literally sick.
Yep.
Like, I knew that was the case with my mom. It's something that broke my heart for years. It was a big part of my recovery to overcome is it physically. I mean, stress and anxiety is something that can physically hurt people. Okay. Because of the traffic we sat in, we're limited in time. So I'm going to move on that one. But I want to bring to clarity, why did we list all those things? Why did we spend time to list all that? Because hopefully in there, you started to recognize a few things of how it's affected you and your family.
Yeah. I mean, like, hopefully you could even go back and listen to the 10 and be like, how many of those are prevalent in my life right now?
Because let's say they answered yes to almost all of them.
Yeah. What's interesting is there are people that are going to still argue.
But still.
whether anything should be done at all. It's just a fact.
It's the only fatal disease on the planet where people often argue, disagree, or fail to do something about than any others. You've heard me say it before, but it is true. Think about how crazy that is. We've learned so much about the disease of addiction. There's brain studies and scans that show it and prove it. And still, men, I'm going to speak for you, most dads still fall victim to, oh my gosh, they just need to knock it off.
Yep.
This is ridiculous. Most of you are like, I know who this person is. This isn't them. This is out of character. They just need to knock it off. We've got to move past that. If you recognize that your family's become sick along with them, I hope what that does, instead of piss you off, is just get you determined to be like, yeah, you're right. You know what? Clearly, the spotlight is so bright on your loved one. The wreckage is piled so high. There's no more arguing or denying that. But when it starts to affect the family, what I see is a lot of people say, nope, that's enough.
Yep.
That's enough. In all the years I've been doing this, someone has to stand up and say that's enough.
But what happens typically? What would you say happens to that person when they do?
They're shot down. Maybe they're looked at. There's something I wrote down because it's one of our posts on Instagram, so I want to make sure I say it right. In families affected by addiction, the person who sets the boundary around the dysfunctional person is often made out to be dysfunctional themselves or even lacking compassion.
Every time.
And you know what else? They always feel exhausted, crazy, overwhelmed, fearful, doubtful, isolated, confused, and at a loss of what to do.
Well, and they're framed to be like not empathetic, right? Like it's just the person that stands up takes so much heat, even maybe ruining or really straining relationships in their family because they are screaming, we have to do something. And then they ironically get pinned as the crazy person in the family. Oh, they're just crazy.
All of that, why are we stating it? How does it help you? Is to show you there is one path forward, and that is to get professional help. You've got to go get you for your family. That's why professional support is so critical. So what's the answer? Someone in the family has to stand up. Someone in the family has to say that's enough. It's just what we just covered. I've heard it in almost every family I've worked with, someone, whether it was the mom. And at times what's great nowadays is because kids are so tuned in and listening and watching so much stuff. Maybe you see them on their phone a lot, drives you crazy. A lot of those kids are the ones that are like, no, this is a problem. They're the ones going to their parents and say, this is not acceptable. Because
that happened in your family.
Yeah, it happened in my family. And this was long ago before people were empowered with information, right? Like
it was a sibling that was like, hey, mom and dad, like we're not doing this anymore.
In the parking lot of a county jail, as my sweet, cute little family's leaving, and the conversation's going a certain way and certain things are being done and rationalization, excuses and blame and arguing and bickering. My little brother, who at this time was little, I don't even think he was in early teens, he swears he got really mad. He did something. I don't know exactly what it was, but he was like, it was disrespectful, but it needed to be. And yelling, he's like, when are we going to wake up? Like he has a problem. And it was just interesting because that was like the person who stood up and drove a stake in the ground and said, no more. So if you're listening into this, that's probably you. And I hope it's you. Someone who's seeking some guidance and resources. You can clearly see, like I said, your loved one, whoever that is in your life that is in addiction, it's an obvious. Let's get over that. They are sick and they're stuck. But you're now seeing that your whole family's affected by it.
Mm-hmm. It's brutal. Your whole family gets sicker and sicker as the process goes.
So how do you move forward? What do? You seek professional help. If others in your family aren't willing to join at this point, you still do it regardless.
And why would you say that? I just want to know. Why would you say they need professional help? How will that help them?
To bring some clarity and peace and sanity so you don't think that you're crazy, so you don't doubt yourself. The steps forward in what's going to happen as a family. You're going to have to speak to the disease of addiction much better and differently than you have for all the past years that you've tried because it hasn't worked. and you're going to speak to it differently. Your family's going to have to come together and unite with a plan. So rather than having a difference of opinion, you go hire a professional. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but my family's not on board. Almost every single person in our program that's had substantial success, not only with their family, but their loved one, someone started the process. Often others quickly join in. When they start sharing some of the things that they're learning, some of the things that the tools that they're now getting and the clarity they have, all of a sudden family members start coming in.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things to witness is how when one person starts and they're the brave one and they're the one taking the heat, they get themselves support. And then suddenly it's like, okay, well, my husband is now ready to be a part of this, or my brother is now helping me in these efforts. And that's when the magic happens.
That's when the magic happens. So I know it may still be confusing, or maybe before this episode that just was a foreign thought. If someone in your life is struggling from the disease of addiction, and you can now, after going through that, clearly see, or maybe you could see even before this episode that your family's being sick, someone needs to start. I've actually worked with families where it was a sibling who started. And then after several weeks of going through these courses and these groups and learning and empowering her, all of a sudden she shows up on camera, and who's sitting next to her? Mom. And then one day it's even like, hey, guess what? Dad listened. He went through some of the courses. He'd like to join today. Your loved one's recovery is not guaranteed, but your recovery and your family's healing is and can be guaranteed every time if you're willing to get yourself some help and support. In every other dynamic, every other tough, horrible situation, when you're dealing with fatal disease, we always do this. Mm-hmm. But with addiction, we make exceptions. We fail to get the proper help and the professional support we need. We fail to get tools and guidance of what to do. We just think that we'll figure it out on our own. That has to stop.
So be the person who's like, I'll clean up the vomit.
Be the person.
I'll get started. They can't clean it up. I'm gonna get started.
And how empowering that when you next meet with your family, however that dynamic is, other people in your life, you're like, guess what? I joined a family recovery program, and here's what we learned this week. That's what we've been doing. I can't believe it. That is how you draw people in. One of the biggest threats to the disease of addiction is unity. When the people in its life, whatever that looks like, start to unite and come together, they can't play each one of you individually. They can't manipulate each one of you individually. So set aside differences. The moral of the story today in episode is stop waiting. Stop waiting. And if some people in the family aren't united, start the process and they will get united.
Yeah.
So I hope that empowers you. And I hope that even by listening in, you could possibly share this with other people in your family that aren't on board, and maybe that'll kickstart the process.
Yes, for sure. I'm going to read the serenity prayer for families, if that's okay.
Yes.
God grant me the serenity to accept that I cannot change other people, the courage to change the person that I can, and the wisdom to know that it is me.
Thank you guys for joining us in this journey. We hope this brings some empowerment to your life, some clarity, and some support. We love you. Thanks.